Imagine that you get sent TDY somewhere and you're going to go to a location you've never been to before. You're going to work with some people you've never been around, and maybe you're going to do some tasks that you don't normally do on a regular basis. That can be a really intimidating experience. So how do you get through that experience, not just surviving, but thriving in that setting? Obviously, you're going to bring some skills and your experience, but one of the other things that's really, really important is to go into that situation with some confidence, to feel like, yes, I can do this and I know I'm going to be successful. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how do you build and maintain confidence. Confidence is an important part of our performance, whether it's on the job, whether it's in sports, in almost any setting, confidence plays a huge role. And so we're going to talk about that idea of confidence today. Sun Tzu very famously said, victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. What he means by that is success comes in the planning process. It comes before you actually get into the setting where you have to perform. And that's where confidence happens. So much of what happens with confidence happens before we get into a setting where we actually need it. And so we're going to talk about how you can build confidence so when you get into that setting where you have to do something, you're ready, you're prepared, and you have the confidence to be successful. What we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about a definition of what confidence is. We'll talk about some of the common misconceptions regarding confidence. We'll talk about some factors that affect human performance that are related to confidence. And then we'll talk about strategies you can use to build confidence, and also some strategies you can use to maintain confidence once you are confident. So let's start with a definition. Today, most of the material that we're going to talk about comes from a book called The Confident Mind. It's by Dr. Nate Zinsser. He's actually a performance psychologist who works at the United States Military Academy at West Point. And he works with West Point cadets, helping them build their confidence. He also has a long history working with Olympic athletes. He's also worked with some professional athletes. He actually worked hand in hand with two-time Super Bowl winner Eli Manning. So he does a lot of work with helping people perform better by being more confident. And so we're going to use a lot of his work today as we talk about confidence. So he defines confidence as a sense of certainty about your ability, which allows you to bypass conscious thought and execute unconsciously. Let's break that definition down a little bit. The first, I think, key point in that definition is to have a sense of certainty. So confidence is going into a situation and saying to yourself, yes, I am ready. I can do this. You want to have that feeling that going into something that maybe is a little bit different, that maybe is a little bit challenging, that you have a sense of certainty. You know inside that, yes, I am capable of performing that. So that's the first piece of that definition of confidence. The second piece of that definition is that certainty is about your ability. So you know that you have the skills, you have the knowledge that you need to be successful. The definition also talks about bypassing conscious thought. Ideally, if you get to the point where you're extremely confident in what you do, you don't have to think about a lot of the little details. They just come naturally. They're things that you have done over and over again, and you're so confident and you're so comfortable in them that they just happen. And you can do them without having to spend a lot of time or effort or energy thinking about them. And then the last piece of that definition is, if you don't have to think about those things, how can you make it so that some of your performance you just do unconsciously? You are confident enough that you just do it without really having to think about it. So that's the definition of confidence that we're going to work with as we go forward with today's lesson. Now, there are some common misconceptions that people do have about confidence. The first one is that confidence is a fixed or inherited trait. Some people believe that there are people who are born confident and there are people who are just not confident at all. What the research tells us, however, is confidence is a trait that you can develop. Almost anybody can develop that trait. It's a matter of certain skills, certain knowledge, and practice, but all of us can become confident in what we do. It's not something that some of us have and some of us don't have and we can't develop. So that's the first misconception people have about confidence. Second misconception people have is that confidence is sort of all-encompassing, that we are either confident, and if we're confident in everything we do, or we don't have confidence and we're not confident in everything we do. What we know, however, is that confidence is really context dependent. I might be confident in one area of my life and one thing that I do, but not confident in another. So it's not an either or, it's in pieces. I'm confident here, but I'm not confident here. Maybe I have a little different level of confidence with something else. So it's not an all-encompassing trait. It's a trait tied to very specific kinds of performance. A third common misconception is that it just naturally develops. Some people believe that if you just do something over and over again and you're successful, you will be confident, and that's not necessarily true. There are people who are high-level performers who still are very unconfident and don't have that feeling that, hey, I know how to do this. There's some specific things we can do as we become successful to grow our confidence, but it is not necessarily going to happen just because we've had success at whatever it is that we're doing. Also, people tend to believe that once you're confident about something, that doesn't go away. That's not necessarily the case. There are many, many instances, if you think about the world of professional sports, for instance, where people have been really, really confident. Things happen, things go wrong, they have a couple of bad games, and their confidence is shattered. So confidence isn't something that's once you have it, it's there forever. It is something that you can lose depending on what happens to you in situations that you find yourself in. The other thing that people think about confidence that's a misconception is that mistakes will erode your confidence. What we actually find is making mistakes and recovering from those mistakes and working through those mistakes and realizing that you can handle those mistakes actually helps develop confidence. So just because you make mistakes and you make an error doesn't mean you're going to lose your confidence. It can actually help you build confidence. So these are 5 common misconceptions that people have about confidence that it's important to understand that these aren't necessarily true as you think about how do I build confidence. So as we think about building confidence, one of the things that's important to understand is confidence is directly related to how our mind and our body connect with one another and how they impact one another. And so that's what we want to talk a little bit about next. We want to talk about that mind-body connection, talk a little bit about the automatic nervous system, talk a little bit about human imperfection, and then inconsistent and delayed return on practice. So we know that there's a direct connection between what we think and what happens with our body. And so we want to take a look at that. So typically we put ourselves in a situation where we're getting ready to perform something or we start performing something. And what tends to happen is we have thoughts about this is going well or this is not going well. I'm being successful, I'm not being successful, I made a mistake or I did that really well. So we generate those thoughts in our head, and what tends to happen then is those thoughts begin to create emotions in our body, whether that's nervousness, whether that's frustration, whether that's feeling proud about what we're doing. So our thoughts generate emotion. And what we also know then is once we begin to generate that emotion, that causes physical changes in our body. That changes what happens in our body. So those emotions, if it's frustration or it's I feel like really good about what I'm doing, that's going to have a physical impact on who we are. And that change in physical state is going to affect our performance. So what we think generates emotion. Those emotions generate physical changes in our body, and those physical changes in our body affect our performance. And of course, once we perform, if we're successful, we're unsuccessful, that is going to loop us right back around to how we think about what we did. And so this becomes a loop, and it can be a spiral that goes up, it could be a spiral that goes down. If you look at this slide, you'll see, for instance, it can be a success cycle where we think, hey, I did really well at this, so I have positive emotion. That positive emotion generates energy and makes me feel good, and so I perform better the next time. And so because I perform better the next time, I feel good, and it just becomes that cycle. But we could also have the other cycle. Zinsser talks about, he calls it the sewer cycle, where what happens is I don't feel good about what I've done. It generates negative emotion. It creates some negative changes in my physical state. And because I have those negative changes in my physical state, it diminishes my performance. And as soon as it diminishes my performance, that just reinforces my thought process that I am not good at this. I'm not successful. And we get in this vicious cycle where we go round and round and round and round. And so part of what confidence is all about is managing this cycle. And so we're going to talk a little bit as we talk about confidence. Keep this in the back of your mind, because really what we're talking about in confidence is how do we manage this cycle and make sure that it's on that success side rather than that side that leads not to success. So our automatic nervous system, really, as I've already mentioned, our thoughts generate emotions, generate physical reactions. And so we have to be aware of that when we get into a situation where we have to perform, particularly when we get into a situation where we have to perform under stress, because those things are all connected. All of us have been in situations where it's very, very stressful, and what ends up happening is we feel this rush, we get adrenaline in our body. We have this rush of adrenaline. And so adrenaline typically is going to raise our heart rate. It's going to increase our breathing rate. It's going to cause us to sweat. Typically, we're going to have this uneasy feeling in our stomach, and adrenaline is going to have that impact. One of the things we have to do is we have to decide, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with those physical reactions that happen when adrenaline kind of courses through our body? And there's kind of two ways to look at that. For a lot of people, what ends up happening is as you begin to feel that queasiness in your stomach, and as you start sweating, and as you start breathing a little harder, your reaction to that is to think, I'm nervous. It creates fear. It creates a sense of danger. And what we know is the people who are most successful, people with confidence, take that a different way. What they do is when they start having those butterflies in their stomach, when they start, their breathing rate goes up, their heart rate goes up, they essentially look at that and say, hey, that's my body telling me I am ready to perform. It's my body telling me I am going from a state of just relaxed to I am moving to a place where I am ready to get things done. Those symptoms, those things like the heart rate and the breathing, they see as this is generating power. This is generating focus. So part of what we want to do as individuals, if we're thinking about confidence, is we want to think about, as we begin to react to situations, we want to reframe how we look at and how we think about the physical reactions we have. We need to move from seeing those things as a sense of fear into, hey, this is readiness happening. When I feel like I got butterflies, when I feel my heart rate increase, that's my body saying, hey, you know what? You are ready. You are ready to get done whatever it is you need to get done. So our body has a huge impact on our level of confidence. Now, there's a couple other factors that are really important to understand before we get into some specific steps to take in terms of building confidence. One is this whole idea of human imperfection. One of the things that we have to realize is that mistakes are inevitable. If we go into situations and we don't believe that we're going to make mistakes, we think that we should be able to perform without mistakes, what's going to happen is anytime we make a mistake, it's going to shatter our confidence. And so one of the things that we have to do if we're going to build confidence is we have to understand and we have to accept the fact that mistakes are an inevitable part of performing. Regardless of how good we are at a particular task, we are going to make mistakes. And if we can accept that that happens, then those mistakes become less impactful on our level of confidence. So we need to understand mistakes happen. Second of all, we need to understand that we are never going to learn anything. We are never going to get better. We're never going to perform more effectively unless we have a process of trial and error. And once again, that trial and error is going to lead us back to making mistakes. So we are not going to get better by just going into a situation and saying, I'm going to try something new. It's going to be perfect the first time. That's just not reality. Learning requires making mistakes, a process of trial and error. What we need to do is we need to move our thinking and kind of reset our mindset from I can't to I can't yet. So when we run into a situation where we make a mistake, where we're in a situation where of trial and error, where we're struggling with something, our focus, our mindset needs to be not I can't do this, but I can't yet. And that yet word is really, really crucial. That shifts our entire mindset from I'm in a fixed state where I'm not able to do this and I'm just not capable to, I can't do it, but I have the ability to do it. I have the capability to do it if I practice, if I learn more, if I work at this, I can get better. That's a confident mindset versus the I can't, which is that, hey, I'm fixed at whatever level of performance I'm at and I just can't get any better. So those are a couple things that you need to think about in terms of human perfection as you think about confidence. Another important thing to think about as you think about, or as you're trying to develop confidence, is inconsistent and delayed return from practice. And let me talk a little bit about what we mean by that. Most people think, okay, if I'm going to practice something, I should, every rep that I'm doing, I should get better. So if I'm learning, say, for instance, to shoot a basketball, I should continually get better and better and better with every shot. And what we know from human performance is that's not the case. All of us have probably been in situations where we're trying to learn something and there's some rapid growth, and then all of a sudden you just sort of hit a plateau. And then you keep working and working, and ideally, then there's suddenly a spurt of growth, and then there might be another plateau. That's how performance develops. It is not nice. It's not a nice, even flow. You would hope that it would be, I start here and I just am in this nice, continuous flow of improvement, but that generally is not how it works. And so we need to recognize that. So when we hit one of those plateaus, or if we even move backwards a little bit, it doesn't shatter our confidence. We don't say to ourselves, well, that must mean that I can't do this. If you hit a plateau, or even if you move backwards as you're learning something new and you're trying something new, that's just part of the process. You've got to work through that because eventually you'll work through that plateau or you'll work back to where you were, because progress typically is not even. You're going to see rapid advances, and then you're going to see places where you're just going to slow down and there's going to be that plateau. And it can create frustration. It can create frustration. It can make you think, hey, I can't do this. But the reality is that's just how performance happens. So that's inconsistent and delayed return from practice. Something to keep in the back of your mind as you think about trying to be confident, because those plateaus, those steps backwards are not an indicator of your ability, okay? They are an indicator that you're learning, and learning is hard. And sometimes learning takes us backwards. Sometimes learning gets stuck for a little bit until there's a new insight. Something happens and we realize, okay, I can move forward now. So those are 4 things that I think are really important as you think about the whole idea of confidence: the mind-body connection, the automatic nervous system, human imperfection, and inconsistent and delayed return on practice. So let's talk about some strategies to use to build confidence and to maintain confidence. One of the first strategies that's really, really important is the ability to kind of filter how we think about the past. We already talked about this cycle already. So we have this performance, and we know that that generates thoughts, it generates emotions, it generates a physical state, and it impacts our performance. So one of the things we have to do is we have to think about, how do I filter past events? And there's 3 strategies that we'd like to share with you that we think are really important. The first one is what's called a top 10 list. And one of the recommendations from experts in the area of confidence is that we should maintain at all times with us, and you can write this down, you can just mentally have this, but writing it down is a great thing to do because then you can see it. We should always have a list of what are our successes? What are the things that we do well? We as humans have a tendency to focus on our flaws and the things that we do wrong. And so the experts say one of the things you ought to do is you constantly ought to maintain a list of what are the top 10 successes we had? What did we do well? What led to that? Think through what led to that success. Think a little bit about what were the results. So what was the impact of that? And we should have that, and every so often we should look at that. And if we get into a situation where we're getting ready to go into a situation where we're being asked to perform, maybe pull out that list and look at it and say, you know what? I was there before. I did that before, and here's what I did well. Here's why I was successful at that, and here's the results of that. So how can I replicate that as I move forward? But just thinking through that list and working through that list generates a positive outlook as you move into that new situation. Now, once you get into a situation where you start learning and you're working on something, you're trying to perform something, one of the other recommendations is throughout the process of learning, you should do immediate progress reviews. And here's what we mean by immediate progress reviews. After you practice something several times, take a minute, stop and identify, okay, I tried that 3 times. Here's the time I did it the best. And look at what was your best rep. What was the best I did at that? And then look at, okay, so what from that rep do I want to do more of? So if that was the best I did, so let's say that I have to do whatever it is, I'm building something or I'm fixing something. Do it several times and then ask yourself, which of those situations did I do best at? And then look at it and say, okay, if that's what was best, what from there made it the best? What was it that made me so successful there? And think about, how do I continue to do that? So if I did this particular step really well, how do I make sure that the next time I do it well? Not focusing on what did I do wrong, what didn't I do well, but what was it that I did well and I did successful? Again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be positive and I'm trying to look ahead. And then I want to commit myself mentally to say, okay, this was the step that made all the difference in the world. This is what made me successful at it. I'm going to commit to focusing on that particular step and finding those little things that we can do that made us successful in the past that we can do again in the future. So that's an immediate progress review. We also recommend that you do some daily reflection. So as you're in a situation where you're growing and you're learning and you're trying new things and that might be stressful and might be a challenge to your confidence, do a reflection every day. Ask yourself these kinds of questions. What kind of effort did I give today? And think about how hard did I work at whatever it was I did? What progress did I make today? Again, we have a tendency to focus on the negative rather than the positive. So think about, what progress did I make today? I was trying to learn something new. I was in a really tough situation. What progress did I make? What did I do well today? What successes did I have? So what came out really well? How did I get better? And how was I successful? So those are really important. That's a really important part of this. So we want to do some reflection while we're in that activity, doing that immediate progress review, but we also want to step back maybe at the end of the day and look at, what did I do? But again, focusing on the positive, focusing on our successes, not focusing on our failures, because that's going to generate positive thought, which generates positive emotion, which generates positive changes in our body, and again, promotes positive performance. So those are 3 strategies for filtering the past that you can use. Now, let's assume that it's now time for you begin to perform. So we've given you some strategies. Now you're going to be put in a situation, okay, now I need you to do whatever it is you need to do, and you need to be confident at it. What are some things you can do? First thing you should think about is what kind of pregame routine can you have? And there's 3 things that we think that are really, really important. One is taking personal inventory. Second is analyzing the situation. And the third is deciding you're enough. So Step number one, take inventory. So if we're going into a new situation and somebody's saying, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go and do this. And you're like, okay, this is going to be a challenge. I've not done this before, or I haven't done it often enough. First thing you should do is take inventory. You should ask yourself, how have I prepared myself? And hopefully you have good answers to that. But that's a really helpful way to go into a situation, is thinking, okay, I have to do this new thing, but you know what? Here's what I did to prepare. So I'm thinking about, again, thinking about those positive thoughts. Second of all, what knowledge and skills do I have? So take an inventory of your knowledge and skills. I prepared, and because I prepared, I know how to do this. I have this skill, so I can take these and apply them to that setting. What experience do I have? What have I done that's like this or similar to this, or have I done it before and been successful at it? So I want to take inventory of those things. I also want to ask myself, so have I practiced this? And if I practice this, how often did I practice? How hard did I practice? So I am taking an inventory when I get ready to step into that arena to perform. I am thinking about what is everything I did to get myself ready. And I'm thinking about those positive things, because that's going to generate confidence, because I'm going to walk in there knowing, hey, I'm prepared. I've got this knowledge, I've got this skill, I've got this experience, and I've practiced. And that sets you up so as you begin to perform, you have some confidence. The other thing that's really important is to analyze the situation. The more certainty we have about a situation, the more confident we can be of how we're going to handle it. So if I go into a situation and I don't have any idea what's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of nervousness about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? So analyzing the situation ahead of time, thinking through, so what could happen? How are things going to unfold? Asking sort of the why questions, or the W questions. So things like why, what, how, when, all of those questions, that preparation really makes it easier for you to walk into a situation being confident, because you already know, you've already thought through, okay, so this is what I think is going to happen. This is what these people are going to do, and I think this is when it's going to happen, and I think this is why they're doing what they're doing. And the more we've thought that through, the more confident we can be when we get into that situation. So preparation and situational awareness really do lead to readiness. So if you can look at yourself and say, hey, I'm prepared, I understand the situation, you should be able to walk into a situation making the decision that, hey, I have what it takes. I have enough to be successful at this particular task, or whatever it is you're being asked to do. Now, once you get into that task, there should be some things that you want to do, kind of in-game routines. So we've already talked about create certainty. So as much as possible, you dictate how things are going to happen. That's going to get you into the flow of what's going on. A second thing that really can be helpful is having a routine that you use over and over again. Sometimes it can be really helpful to use cue words or phrases. There's a lot of, as I was reading, there's a lot of, for instance, basketball players who will come up to the line to shoot a free throw, and they will have a phrase that they will say in their head. Or if you watch basketball, notice how most basketball players, when they come up to a free throw line, they have a routine they go through. They might dribble the ball 3 times, and then they have a certain movement. Or if you look at a pitcher in baseball, they have a routine. A baseball batter has a routine. A lot of professional athletes have realized that one of the things that helps them be confident is every time they get ready to perform, they have a routine. And that routine signals them, okay, you're ready, you know what to do, now let's do it. And so if you can create a routine like that, or use a cue word, use an action, that could be very, very helpful in you being confident in a situation. The other thing is just take a minute, take a deep breath. So get in there, get ready to go. You'll notice, again, thinking about basketball, a lot of times you'll see that basketball player, when they come up to the free throw line, they may dribble a couple times, they may do a couple things, but a lot of times you'll see them just stop for a minute. And what they're doing is they're taking a deep breath, they're settling themselves. That's the same kind of thing that you can do when you get into a situation where you need to be confident. And then just focus on what it is that you need to do. Once you use that cue word or that phrase or that action and you do take that deep breath, then it's just about, okay, let me look at and let me focus on the task or whatever it is that I need to get done. So having a routine like that can be really, really important. So as you get into whatever situation you're into, take that personal inventory as you get ready to start, analyze the situation, know that you are capable, and then have a routine that you use each and every time you get into a situation. Now, you can do all that and be confident, but what happens when things go wrong? A lot of times people say, well, that's where I lose my confidence. I came in, I knew exactly what was going to happen, and then this went wrong and it just shattered what I was going to do. There are some ways that you can handle when things go wrong that can maintain your confidence. One of them is adopt what we call a shooter's mentality. If you think about somebody who's shooting basketball, or if you think about, let's take Cadams, somebody who's shooting a weapon, you're not always going to get it right the first time. In fact, if you're shooting a weapon on a range, typically your first shot is going to be off a little bit, but what you're using that first shot to do is to adjust the next shot. And then you're going to use that shot to adjust the next shot. So when things go wrong, don't think of it as, oh, I've blown this. Think about it as, okay, that was an approximation of what I need to do. Now I can learn from that and let me make the adjustment. Try it again. If something goes wrong again, now I know, okay, where do I need to adjust? So really, those mistakes, the things you do wrong, are feedback to help you get better. And that's how we need to approach them. It's not, I'm a failure. It's, I just got valuable feedback that tells me that I have to do this differently, and here's how I should do it differently. So think about mistakes as feedback. Reframe them in terms of they're temporary. So you always want to think about, I made a mistake, and again, it's not, I can't do this now. I realize I can't do this, but I can't do it yet. It's temporary, and I'm going to be able to overcome them. And that they're limited in scope. I made a mistake on one thing. That doesn't mean that I'm terrible at the entire entity that I'm trying to do. It's a specific task that I've made a mistake on. It's not everything in total. And that it doesn't reflect who I am as a person. Just because I can't do one particular task doesn't mean that I'm terrible at whatever it happens to be. It just means that that particular task is something that I can't do. So that's an important part of maintaining confidence when you get in a situation where you run into some mistakes, some problems, and things go wrong. So that's a little bit about how to build and maintain confidence. We talked a little bit about that definition of confidence, that certainty to be able to just kind of go into automatic mode and get things done. Some of those common misconceptions about how confidence is built and how confidence can be lost. We talked about the effects of human body as it interacts with the mind and the importance of our thoughts and our emotions and how those affect what we do and how that affects confidence. And then we talked about some strategies to build confidence. Things like taking inventory of where we are, thinking about how we practice, and then lastly, some strategies to maintain confidence in situations that go wrong. So we hope that this has been helpful, that there's some ideas that will help you in terms of building and maintain confidence. Highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more, taking a look at Mr. Zinzer's book. It's a great book, has some great ideas, and hope you got something out of this. Thanks.